morning. It's Wednesday, August 24th, and I want to talk to you now about Florida. I never really liked Florida. My folks had a place in Plantation for about 20 years, and that's where they retired to, and they were quite happy there, and I visited them quite often, but I never really liked Florida. And my in-laws had a place in West Palm Beach, Century Village in West Palm Beach, and I visited them quite often also, and I never really grew to like Florida. When I went to places that were warm, I went to Bermuda, primarily because they had a marathon there that I ran, and I also spent many years going to Puerto Rico over Christmas and New Year's. And I had a timeshare there, and we had wonderful times. But Florida never really appealed to me. And now I'm putting them on my shit list because of their governor. Governor Ron DeSantis, who has decided that he's running for president, which is his right to do that. But what he's doing right now is a threat to this country. And when I see these actions, I know that this man is not right to be a president. Ron DeSantis is making a tour. He's making a political tour of boards of education around Florida. And he's donating money that he has raised for his campaign. He's donating money to those school boards. And why is he doing that? Because he wants them to appoint members of his tribe, those people that think like him. He wants the people that think like him to be on the school boards around Florida. And I think somehow or other that's a violation. Why should the political animal that is running a state or the federal government have a big say in how we educate our children? This is not right. I believe that education should be an open forum, that children and adults, semi-adults, should be educated to think, and therefore they have to be exposed to many different ideas. So if you want to run around and appoint candidates who are narrow-minded like yourself, and there are many parents who probably agree with his choices, which is just too bad, because this country needs more free thinkers. They need more people to think outside the box, to get us straightened out, to recognize the fact of what is wrong with this country right now. But DeSantis doesn't want to do that. He wants to ensure that white Christianity is going to remain at the top of the list in this country. Now, he may not come out and say that, but he thinks that, and his actions point that way to me. So it's a threat. It's a threat to this nation to have a governor who's willing to run to different school boards and rally to get people who think like him on the school board. Imagine that he is setting an example for other governors to do the same thing. Are we going to have politicians controlling the education of our children? That's a terrible thought. That's a terrible thought. Our educators are the ones that should be educating our children. And the parents. The parents have a great role to play in the education of children. And I can speak from my experience as a teacher. I taught computer science for 26 years at Nassau Community College. And I was the primary teacher of advanced languages. Now, when you're teaching language, computer language, which essentially is the code that will allow a computer to complete the task, learning the language is about 30% of what you need. What you really need is the ability to solve problems. You need to be able to think outside the box. You need to understand all of the ramifications of the code and the methodology. Because computer languages are one thing, but the logic that runs that system is entirely different. Nobody can teach you the logic. The thinking process in order to solve the problem is critical. to the way that you write the code. And so I look at education that way also. If you want people to be well educated and to do great jobs, they have to know more than some basic philosophy. They have to be ready and prepared to solve any situation that they get into. Because everything is not a straight line from the beginning to the end. Along the way, you will run into situations that you have to solve that you can't really imagine all the time. And that's the way it is with solving and creating a computer program. You start at the front and you're going to do this, this, and this. But as you're going along, you find roadblocks. And you have to get around those roadblocks. You have to get through those roadblocks. And so the thing that I always impressed upon my student is ignore the roadblocks until you get to the end. And then go back and solve each roadblock individually. And you'll find out that by solving the roadblock, you'll have another roadblock that you have to solve. So that's the thing that bothers me about going and picking people from the Board of Education who think like you. We want people who don't think like you. We want people who are capable of thinking about any situation without having a bias, a built-in bias. And that's what Ron DeSantis is trying to do. He is trying to create an educational system in the state of Florida that is totally biased to his way of thinking. Now, maybe if he was a different kind of guy, I would say, okay, maybe that's okay if we have a bias system that leans toward a person like somebody else. But I could not accept that anyhow. I don't care if you're left of center, right of center, whatever it is, you have a right to be that. But you don't have the right to force young children to think like you. And so I think Ron DeSantis is a bad man, an evil man. And he should not have a chance to run for president, but I can't control that. And probably there are 50 or 70 million people who agree with him in this country. And that's a sad, sad situation. And so I'm against what Santos is doing. And I would be against it no matter who was doing it. So I leave you with those thoughts. This is a free country, and we should be able to expand that freedom to give people an education that teaches them to think on their own, gives them the background that will make them great thinkers and great problem solvers. So that's it for today. I'll see you in the morning. Bye.